Dog barks near Vatican Conclave. What police discover moments later brings everyone to tears. The explosion rocked Terminal F of Atlanta International Airport, sending waves of panic through the morning crowd. But what should have been catastrophic turned into a masterclass in K9 intervention, thanks to Max's nose and Sarah Collins' quick thinking. The Belgian Malinois had detected the device hidden inside a maintenance panel 20 minutes before detonation, giving the bomb squad precious time to contain the blast. Now 3 weeks later, Sarah watched Max's ears prick forward as they navigated the dim passages beneath Vatican City. The same instincts that had saved hundreds of lives in Atlanta were on high alert here, deep in the world's smallest sovereign state. Their footsteps echoed off ancient stone, the beam of her tactical flashlight cutting through centuries of history. "Easy, boy," Sarah whispered, noting the subtle changes in her partner's posture. 6 years of working together had taught her to read Max like a book. The slight bristling of his fur, the way his nose worked overtime. Something had caught his attention. The radio at her shoulder crackled. "Team 3, status check." The Italian accent was thick but clear. "Collins here. Tunnel section C7 clear so far." She kept her voice low, though they were supposed to be alone in this section. The combined task force had divided the underground network into grids, searching for any threats to the impending conclave. Max stopped abruptly, his head turning toward an unremarkable stretch of wall. Sarah had learned long ago that nothing was truly unremarkable when Max showed interest. The dog's muscles tensed beneath his tactical vest, and then came the sound she'd been both expecting and dreading, a low, insistent bark. "Possible situation in C7, she reported, her free hand moving instinctively to the sidearm at her hip. "Max has a hit." The response was immediate. "Backup en route. Maintain position." But Max was already working the wall, his nose tracing an invisible pattern across the ancient stones. Sarah played her light over the surface, looking for anything out of place. The stone blocks were massive, fitted together with medieval precision, their faces scarred by time. "What have you got, partner?" she murmured, trusting Max's instincts as completely as she trusted her own. The dog's response was another bark, more urgent this time. Sarah ran her gloved hand over the wall where Max indicated. Years of experience had taught her that dogs could detect subtle changes in air currents, minute electromagnetic variations, even the lingering molecules of human presence. Whatever Max had found, it wasn't random. The sound of approaching footsteps announced her backup, 2 gendarmerie officers and a member of the Italian state police. "Agent Collins," the senior officer acknowledged. "Your dog is certain?" "Max doesn't make mistakes," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the wall. "In Atlanta, he found a device that had been hidden for weeks. Here." She pressed against a particularly worn block and felt the slightest give. "Here, he's found something too." Udu, the stone, shifted under her hand, accompanied by the grinding sound of ancient mechanisms. A section of wall, perfectly camouflaged among its surroundings, swung inward on hidden hinges. The beam of Sarah's flashlight revealed a narrow passage beyond, its walls lined with modern metal conduit instead of ancient stone. The air that rushed out carried the unmistakable scent of electronics and human presence. "Central, we've got an unauthorized tunnel in C7, she reported, her voice tight with controlled tension. "Recent construction, well hidden, request full team response." Max's ears were fully forward now, his body rigid with alertness. Sarah recognized this posture too. There was more to find, and whatever it was close. The backup team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the entrance while Sarah and Max took point. The passage ran straight for about 30 feet before opening into a larger space. What they found there made Sarah's blood run cold. The room was a surveillance hub, its walls lined with high-end monitors displaying live feeds from throughout the Vatican. Several showed areas that should have been completely restricted: the cardinal's quarters, private meeting rooms, even sections of the Sistine Chapel itself. A bank of servers hummed in one corner, while scattered papers covered a central desk. "We've got a major breach," Sarah reported, her voice hard. "Professional setup, multiple surveillance points. They're watching everything." Max moved purposefully to one of the desk drawers, pawing at it insistently. Sarah opened it carefully, finding a tablet inside. The screen came to life at her touch, revealing a list of cardinals' names, each accompanied by what appeared to be compromising information. "This isn't just surveillance," she realized aloud. "It's blackmail. They're trying to control the conclave." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about disrupting the papal election, it was about controlling its outcome. The same organization that had tried to bring down Terminal F was playing a much longer, more sophisticated game here. As the room filled with task force personnel, Sarah felt Max press against her leg, his mission accomplished, but his vigilance unwavering. She reached down to scratch behind his ears, a gesture of appreciation that had become second nature over their years together. "Good boy," she murmured, but her mind was already racing ahead. This was just the beginning. The hidden surveillance center was their first real break, but Sarah knew from experience that people capable of infiltrating the Vatican itself wouldn't give up easily. They'd found the threat, but now came the dangerous part, stopping it before it was too late. The radio chatter increased as more teams arrived, but Sarah's focus remained on Max, who had moved to the room's far corner and was showing interest in another section of wall. Whatever secrets this hidden chamber held, she was certain of one thing: they hadn't found them all yet. "Ready to work, partner?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Max's tail wagged once, his posture conveying both alertness and determination. Together they'd prevented a massacre in Atlanta. Now, in these ancient tunnels beneath Vatican City, they faced an equally crucial task: protecting one of the world's most sacred traditions from those who would corrupt it for their own ends. Sarah checked her watch. 16 hours until the conclave began. The race was on. The hidden room buzzed with activity as forensics teams catalogued evidence, but Sarah's attention was fixed on the tablet in her hands. The blackmail files were encrypted, but what she could access painted a disturbing picture. Someone had spent months, maybe years, gathering dirt on key cardinals. "Agent Collins." The voice carried the weight of authority. Cardinal Giuseppe Romano stood in the doorway, his red cassock a stark contrast to the tactical gear of the task force members. As head of Vatican security, he'd been briefed on the discovery. A moment, Max's ears twitched at the cardinal's approach, but he remained focused on the far corner where he'd detected something earlier. Sarah handed the tablet to a forensics expert and followed Romano into the tunnel. "This is worse than we feared," Romano said, his English carrying a slight Sicilian accent. "If they've compromised the security of the conclave—" A sharp bark from Max cut through the conversation. Sarah turned to see her partner pawing intensely at the corner panel he'd been investigating. "Excuse me, Your Eminence." Sarah rushed back into the room, Romano close behind. Max's behavior was unmistakable. There was something behind that wall. The forensics team cleared the area as Sarah examined the panel. Like the entrance they'd discovered earlier, this one had been expertly concealed. "There's another chamber," she announced, finding the hidden mechanism. The panel swung open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a small room filled with servers. "This is their data center." Romano crossed himself, staring at the blinking arrays. "How could they build all this without being detected?" Sarah was about to respond when Max suddenly growled, a sound she rarely heard from him. Her hand moved to her weapon as a figure darted from behind the servers toward a previously hidden exit at the back of the room. "Stop, federal agent!" Sarah's shout echoed off the walls as she pursued, Max already sprinting ahead. The suspect was fast, clearly familiar with the tunnel system. They raced through a maze of passages, the sound of their footsteps bouncing off ancient stone. Max was closing the gap when the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Sarah recognized it from their earlier briefing. They were directly beneath the Sistine Chapel. The suspect turned, and in the beam of Sarah's flashlight, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face. "Father Marco?" The young priest who'd helped brief their team that morning stood cornered, his eyes wild. Before Sarah could react, he pulled a device from his pocket. "One more step and I trigger the charges," he warned, his voice trembling. "All the evidence, all the servers, gone." Max held position, muscles coiled, waiting for Sarah's command. She kept her weapon trained on Marco, mind racing. If there were explosives rigged to the servers, they'd lose everything they'd discovered. "Why, Father?" she asked, buying time as she assessed options. "You're supposed to protect the church." "Protect it?" Marco laughed bitterly. "The church needs reform. The old guard, they resist change. This was our chance to ensure the right cardinal becomes pope. By blackmail? That's not reform, that's corruption. You don't understand. The information we gathered, it proves how corrupt they already are. We're just using their sins against them." Sarah noticed Max slowly shifting position, moving to flank the priest. Marco was so focused on her, he hadn't noticed. "Who's we, Father? The same people behind the Atlanta bombing?" Marco's expression flickered. "Atlanta was a mistake. Too crude. This is surgical. Precise." "Nothing precise about terrorism," Sarah countered, seeing Max was almost in position. "And that's what this is. You're holding the entire College of Cardinals hostage. We're saving the church." Marco's hand trembled on the detonator. "The next pope will bring real change. Social justice, modernization." "Max, take!" Sarah's command cut through the air. The Belgian Malinois launched himself at Marco's arm, his trained grip precise and powerful. The detonator clattered to the floor as Marco screamed. Sarah moved in, securing the priest while retrieving the device. "Saving the church. You infiltrated the Vatican, spied on cardinals, planted explosives under the Sistine Chapel. Tell me how that serves God." As she cuffed Marco, her radio crackled. "Agent Collins, status, suspect in custody," she reported. "And we need EOD down here, possible explosives near the server room." Marco sagged against the wall. "You don't understand. We had to ensure the right outcome. The information we gathered will be investigated properly." Sarah cut him off. "Every cardinal you blackmailed, every secret you stole, it'll all come out. But it'll come out legally." The bomb squad arrived minutes later, followed by more Vatican police. As they led Marco away, Cardinal Romano approached Sarah, his face grave. "The conclave begins in 12 hours, he said. "How much of the surveillance system remains active?" Sarah watched Max sniffing the area where Marco had been standing. His posture told her he'd caught another scent. Father Marco wasn't working alone. The operation's too sophisticated, and Max... She paused as her partner moved purposefully toward a new section of the chamber. "Max thinks there's more to find." Romano's expression darkened. "Then we have 12 hours to uncover a conspiracy that could be years in the making." "Your Eminence," Sarah said carefully, "I need to ask you something. The files we found, some mention a cardinal who visited Atlanta 3 weeks before the bombing attempt." The cardinal's face remained impassive, but Sarah caught a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Many cardinals travel, Agent Collins. This one met with known members of the organization we're tracking, and now we find the same group here. You're suggesting a cardinal might be involved?" Romano's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm suggesting we can't rule anything out. And if we're going to find the truth..." She was interrupted by Max's urgent barking from across the chamber. "We need to follow every lead, no matter where it takes us." Romano was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Do what you must, Agent Collins. But remember, the eyes of the world are on Vatican City. Whatever you uncover, whatever you do, it must be handled with discretion." Sarah watched him leave, then turned to where Max was indicating another hidden panel. Her partner's discovery in the first tunnel had blown the case wide open. Now, as she examined this new section of wall, she couldn't shake the feeling that what they'd find behind it would change everything. "Okay, Max," she whispered, reaching for the panel. "Let's see what else they've been hiding." The latest hidden panel had yielded a trove of papers, and one photograph stopped Sarah's breath cold. The image showed a man she'd spent years trying to forget, Viktor Kovalev, The same terrorist who'd killed her father. He was shaking hands with a cardinal outside a hotel in Atlanta. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the image. 8 years ago, her father had been investigating a series of church bombings when he got too close to Kovalev's organization. The explosion that killed him had been ruled an accident, but Sarah had never believed it. Max pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. His warm presence anchored her, just as it had during those dark days after her father's death. She'd been a rookie K9 handler then, and Max was just a year into his service. Together, they'd pulled each other through the grief. "I know that face." Cardinal Romano's voice made her start. He'd returned to check on their progress, and now stood examining the photo over her shoulder. "Cardinal Fletcher. He oversees our interfaith diplomatic relations." Sarah forced her voice to remain steady. "When was this taken?" 3 weeks before your airport incident." Romano frowned. "Fletcher was in Atlanta for an ecumenical conference." The pieces clicked into place. Sarah pulled up the encrypted files they'd recovered earlier, finding one labeled Fletcher. The encryption was different from the others, more sophisticated. "Your Eminence, I need to tell you something about the man in this photo." Sarah took a deep breath. "Viktor Kovalev, he's—" A burst of static from her radio cut her off. "Agent Collins, multiple intruders in the North Tunnel complex. They're headed your way." Gunfire echoed through the stone passages. Max was already at alert, facing the main entrance. Sarah drew her weapon, positioning herself between the cardinal and the door. "Exit route," she commanded. Max immediately moved to the back of the chamber, indicating a narrow passage they'd discovered earlier. "Your Eminence, we need to move, now." Romano hesitated. "The evidence is backed up," Sarah assured him, though she quickly stuffed the photo into her tactical vest. "Move!" They barely made it into the passage when the first attackers reached the chamber. Sarah caught a glimpse of professional gear and military-grade weapons before she sealed the hidden door. "They knew we'd find this place," Romano said as they hurried through the tunnel. "They were waiting. Or someone told them," Sarah replied grimly. She'd seen the precision of their movement. These weren't common mercenaries, they were trained operatives. Max led them through the labyrinth, taking turns Sarah hadn't known existed. Twice he stopped them just in time to avoid intersecting with more armed men. The dog's intimate knowledge of the tunnel system, built up over hours of searching, was their only advantage. They emerged in a small courtyard, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica looming above them in the late afternoon sun. Sarah's radio crackled with reports of gunfire in multiple locations. The Vatican was under attack. "The cardinals," Romano gasped. "The pre-conclave meeting starts in an hour. They'll all be gathering in the—" "Sistine Chapel," Sarah finished. The pieces suddenly fit together. "That's their play. Create chaos in the tunnels, drive security to respond, then hit the cardinals when they're all in one place." "The perfect opportunity to eliminate opposition," Romano agreed, "or ensure cooperation through fear." Sarah's mind raced. "Your Eminence, I need you to tell me everything you know about Cardinal Fletcher. 8 years ago, was he involved with any investigations into church bombings?" Romano's eyes widened. "Yes. He led a special committee. But what does that—" "My father was investigating those bombings when he died." Sarah's voice was hard. "He found a connection between the bomber and someone high in the church. The day before he could report it, his car exploded." Understanding dawned on Romano's face. "Agent Collins, are you suggesting—" "Fletcher meets with Kovalev 3 weeks before a bombing attempt in Atlanta. Now we find evidence of a massive conspiracy inside the Vatican, and heavily armed men show up the moment we discover Fletcher's involvement." She checked her weapon. "This goes deeper than just controlling the Conclave." Max's sudden growl interrupted them. Footsteps approached from multiple directions. "The Sistine Chapel," Sarah said quickly. "How do we get there without using the main corridors?" Romano pointed to a small service door. "Through the old servants' passages, but they're like a maze." Sarah looked at Max, who was already oriented toward the door, ready to move. "Good thing we have the best guide in Vatican City." They slipped inside, just as more armed men entered the courtyard. As they navigated the narrow passages, Sarah's mind kept returning to the photograph. For 8 years, she'd searched for justice for her father. Now, in the heart of Vatican City, she was finally closing in on the truth. "Your father," Romano said softly as they climbed a narrow staircase. "What was his name?" "Detective Michael Collins, Boston PD." Romano stopped short. "Michael Collins. He sent us information. Names, dates, bank transactions. It implicated—" The cardinal trailed off, his face pale. "Implicated who?" Before Romano could answer, Max froze, his ears forward. Somewhere ahead, a door opened. They could hear voices, American accents discussing positions and timing. Sarah checked her watch. 40 minutes until the cardinals gathered. 40 minutes to prevent an attack, expose a conspiracy, and finally uncover who had ordered her father's death. She looked at Max, saw the same determination in his stance that she felt in her heart. Together, they'd tracked Kovalev's organization from Atlanta to Rome. Whatever they found behind the next door, they would face it together. "Ready, partner," she whispered. Max's tail twitched once, their private signal of absolute unity. Sarah took a deep breath, thinking of her father, of all the years spent searching for answers. The truth was within reach, hidden somewhere in these ancient walls. She just had to survive long enough to find it. The servants' passage opened into a narrow gallery overlooking the Sistine Chapel. Below, Vatican security teams were conducting their final sweep before the cardinals arrived. Sarah counted at least 6 men who didn't match the usual security profile, their movements too precise, their attention focused on the exits rather than entry points. "They're already in position," she whispered to Romano. "Blending with your security teams." Max's ears suddenly pricked forward, his body tensing. Sarah had learned to trust these subtle warnings more than any technology. Someone was approaching their position. "Your Eminence," a familiar voice called softly. "Are you there?" "Cardinal Fletcher," Romano responded, stepping forward before Sarah could stop him. "Thank God you're safe." The American cardinal emerged from the shadows, his red cassock dusty from the tunnels. Sarah kept her hand near her weapon, studying his face. He looked exactly as he had in the photo with Kovalev, though 8 years older. "The armed men," Fletcher said. "They're everywhere. I barely escaped when they breached the archives." His accent was pure Boston, just like her father's had been. "We need to warn the others." "Actually," Sarah stepped into view, weapon drawn, "I think we need to talk about Atlanta and about Detective Michael Collins." Fletcher's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught the micro-tension in his shoulders. "I'm afraid I don't." 3 weeks before the airport bombing, you met with Viktor Kovalev. 8 years ago, my father sent evidence to the Vatican about corruption in the church. The next day, his car exploded. "Agent Collins," Romano interjected. "Surely you don't think—" The attack came without warning. Fletcher moved with a speed that belied his age, producing a small pistol from within his cassock. But Max was faster. The Belgian Malinois launched himself at Fletcher's arm, teeth sinking into flesh. The cardinal's shot went wide, but he managed to slam Max into the stone wall with surprising strength. Sarah heard the sickening impact, followed by a yelp of pain that turned her blood cold. "Max!" The cry escaped her throat as her partner crumpled to the floor. She had her weapon trained on Fletcher, but the cardinal was already using Romano as a shield, his pistol pressed to the older man's head. "Drop it," Fletcher commanded, "or his death will shake the foundations of the church." Sarah's mind raced. Max lay motionless against the wall, but she could see him breathing. The sound of footsteps below indicated the fake security teams were responding to the gunshot. "Why?" she demanded, keeping her weapon steady. "What could be worth all this?" "Progress," Fletcher spat. "For centuries, this institution has resisted change. Kovalev's organization offered resources, technology, a chance to force modernization. Your father nearly exposed us before we were ready, so you had him killed. Sacrifices were necessary, just as they're necessary now." Fletcher's smile was cold. "The next pope will bring radical change to the church, and if some cardinals need persuasion through blackmail or elimination through unfortunate accidents, so be it." A low growl cut through the tension. Max was struggling to his feet, blood matting his fur, but his eyes locked on Fletcher. Sarah saw the Cardinal's attention waver for a split second, all the opening she needed. Her shot caught Fletcher in the shoulder, spinning him away from Romano. Max, despite his injuries, managed to knock the Cardinal's legs out from under him. The pistol clattered across the floor as Fletcher went down, but the victory was short-lived. The gallery door burst open, armed men flooding in. Sarah pulled Romano behind a pillar as bullets chipped the ancient stone. "Max, come!" she called, but her partner was limping badly, struggling to reach her position. Each step seemed to cause him pain. Fletcher's laughter rose above the gunfire. "Shoot them all! The world will blame radical terrorists. The sympathy alone will guarantee our candidate's selection." Sarah faced an impossible choice. She could see more gunmen approaching from the far end of the gallery. Their position would be overrun in seconds, but Max was still exposed, and in his injured state, he couldn't move fast enough to reach cover. Time seemed to slow as she remembered another moment 8 years ago, when she'd been too far away to save someone she loved. The memory of her father's explosion flashed before her eyes. "Not again. Not Max. Your Eminence," she said to Romano. "Get ready to run." Before he could respond, Sarah broke from cover, firing rapidly at Fletcher's men while sprinting toward her wounded partner. Bullets whined past her as she reached Max, shielding him with her body as she scooped him up. Pain exploded in her left arm, a bullet grazed, but adrenaline kept her moving. She half-carried, half-dragged Max back toward the pillar where Romano waited. Her partner tried to help, his loyalty pushing him beyond his injuries, but she could feel him trembling with the effort. They barely made it to cover when a new sound echoed through the gallery. Vatican gendarmerie sirens. Fletcher's men suddenly found themselves caught between Sarah's position and approaching reinforcements. "It's over, Fletcher," Sarah called out, cradling Max while keeping her weapon ready. "The evidence is already backed up and distributed. Even if you kill us, the truth comes out." "The truth," Fletcher laughed again, but there was an edge of desperation in it now. "The truth is, I've spent decades watching this institution decay from within. Everything I've done was to save it. By consorting with terrorists, by murder." Romano's voice carried the weight of genuine anguish. "You've betrayed everything we stand for." The gallery doors burst open again, but this time it was the gendarmerie tactical team. Fletcher's men found themselves surrounded, outgunned, with no chance of escape. "Agent Collins," the Cardinal called out as his men surrendered, "your father was right about everything, and for what it's worth, I'm glad you're the one who finally exposed it all." "Save it," Sarah snapped, her attention focused on Max. Her partner's breathing was labored, his fur sticky with blood. "I need a medic. Officer down." As the gendarmerie secured the scene, Sarah held Max close, whispering the reassurance she'd given him countless times over their years together. "Stay with me, partner. Just stay with me." The last thing she saw before the medical team arrived was Cardinal Fletcher being led away in handcuffs, his red cassock a stark contrast to the tactical gear of his escorts. 8 years of searching for answers, and now she had them. But as she felt Max trembling in her arms, Sarah realized the price of truth might be higher than she'd ever imagined. Romano knelt beside her, his own medical training taking over as he examined Max's injuries. "The veterinary team is on its way, but you have a choice to make, Agent Collins. The bombing evidence is in Fletcher's private safe. If we hurry—" "No choice at all," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm. "Max first. Everything else can wait." As if understanding her words, Max managed to lift his head slightly, his tail offering a weak wag. Even now, he was trying to tell her he was ready to continue the mission. "Rest, partner," she whispered, fighting back tears. "You've done enough. You've done everything." The sound of running feet announced the arrival of medical help, but Sarah's world had narrowed to the wounded dog in her arms and a silent prayer that she hadn't found justice for her father at the cost of losing her best friend. The Vatican Police Veterinary Clinic was a stark contrast to the ancient grandeur outside, all modern steel and medical equipment. Sarah watched through the observation window as doctors worked on Max, her tactical vest still sticky with his blood. His right side took most of the impact, Dr. Rossi explained, her English precise despite her Italian accent. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, but the skull and spine appear intact. The next few hours are critical. Sarah's untreated bullet graze throbbed, but she ignored it. On the other side of the glass, Max was connected to monitors, his strong frame looking suddenly vulnerable under the surgical lights. 6 years of partnership flashed through her mind. Training sessions, successful missions, quiet evenings at home. Max had been there for every moment since her father's death. Agent Collins, Cardinal Romano's voice pulled her back to the present. Fletcher's private safe. If we don't move now, his people might destroy the evidence, Sarah finished. She'd been avoiding this moment, knowing what it meant. How long until the conclave? 3 hours. Once it begins, the Sistine Chapel will be sealed. If Fletcher's candidate is selected, everything he did was for nothing. Sarah pressed her hand against the glass, watching Max's chest rise and fall. Dr. Rossi, if anything changes, you'll be the first to know, the vet promised. He's strong. He's fighting. Sarah felt the weight of her father's badge in her pocket, her good luck charm for the past 8 years. Keep fighting, partner, she whispered to Max. Then to Romano, where's Fletcher's office? The Cardinal's private chambers were exactly what Sarah expected. Ornate, pristine, and filled with secrets. While Vatican forensics teams photographed everything, she focused on the wall safe hidden behind a Renaissance painting. The combination? She asked one of the technicians working on it. 20 minutes minimum, he replied, unless we find it written down somewhere. Sarah studied the room. Fletcher was meticulous, organized. Everything had its place. On his desk, a well-worn Bible caught her eye. Opening it, she found dozens of passages marked with small tabs. Cardinal, she called to Romano, these verses, are they significant? Romano examined the markings. These are, yes, the passages traditionally read during conclave, but some of these tabs are older than others. Sarah counted the age tabs. 6 numbers. Want to bet they match the safe's combination? The technician input the numbers, and the safe clicked open. Inside, they found a laptop and several USB drives. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she powered up the computer. 8 years, she murmured. Everything my father found, everything Fletcher's been doing since. The files were extensive and damning. Financial records showing millions flowing from Kovalev's organization through church charities. Surveillance photos of meetings between Fletcher and known terrorists. And finally, emails discussing Detective Michael Collins and the unfortunate necessity of his elimination. My God, Romano breathed, reading over her shoulder. The depth of this corruption. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Rossi. Internal bleeding worse. Emergency surgery needed. Please come. The world tilted. Sarah gripped the desk, her father's case file open on the screen before her. Everything she'd spent 8 years searching for was right here. Go, Romano said softly. We have enough. I'll ensure it reaches the proper authorities. Sarah hesitated. The conclave? We'll proceed without Fletcher's influence. The evidence is secure. Your partner needs you. She was running before he finished speaking, her father's badge bouncing against her hip. In the clinic, Dr. Rossi met her outside the operating room. The impact damaged his liver, the vet explained quickly. We need to operate now, but with his injuries, the risk is significant. Through the window, Sarah could see the surgical team prepping. Max lay unconscious, his powerful frame dwarfed by the medical equipment. He's pulled through worse, Sarah said, more to herself than the doctor. In Atlanta, after the warehouse explosion, a commotion in the hallway interrupted her. Vatican police were rushing past, radios crackling with urgent commands. What's happening? Sarah grabbed one of the officers she recognized. Fletcher's men, he reported breathlessly. They've breached the evidence room. They're trying to reach the server room with the surveillance data. Sarah looked back at Max, her heart tearing in 2 directions. The surgical team was ready to begin if something went wrong. A memory surfaced. Max, just 2 years into their partnership, refusing to leave her side after she'd been shot. He'd stayed through the surgery, through recovery, loyal to the end. Dr. Rossi, Sarah's voice was steady now. Save him, whatever it takes. The vet nodded, understanding in her eyes. Sarah touched the window one last time, then turned to the waiting officers. Where are they now? The next 10 minutes were a blur of gunfire and tactical maneuvers through the Vatican's underground corridors. Sarah's arm burned where the bullet had grazed her, but adrenaline kept her moving. Fletcher's men had managed to breach the outer security of the evidence room, but the reinforced door was holding. They have explosives, one of the gendarmerie reported. If they breach that door... Sarah studied the layout. Without Max to watch her back, every move felt riskier, but she'd learned from the best. The old drainage tunnel, she said. It runs behind the evidence room. Any chance it's still accessible? 5 minutes later, she was crawling through centuries of dust and cobwebs. The passage was narrow, designed for water, not people, but she could hear Fletcher's men on the other side of the wall, preparing their charges. Her phone vibrated. Doctor, Rossi, in surgery, stable for now. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, sending up a silent prayer. Then she pulled her father's badge from her pocket and kissed it once, just as she had the day she graduated from the academy. This ends now, she whispered. For Dad, for Max, for everyone they've hurt. She pressed the detonator in her hand, and the small charge the gendarmerie had given her blew open the passage behind Fletcher's men. In the chaos that followed, Sarah thought of Max in surgery, fighting for his life. She channeled every lesson he'd taught her about timing, about precision, about never hesitating when the moment came. 3 minutes later, it was over. Fletcher's men were down or surrendered. The evidence was secure, and Sarah finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion seeping into her bones. Her phone buzzed again. She almost couldn't bring herself to look. Dr. Rossi, surgery successful. He's asking for you. Sarah slid down the wall, tears finally breaking free. In her pocket, her father's badge seemed to warm slightly, as if acknowledging that at last, after 8 years, justice had been served. Agent Collins, one of the Vatican officers, approached cautiously. The Conclave, they're waiting for your report before they begin. Sarah wiped her eyes and stood. There would be time for tears later. Right now, Max was waiting, and she had a conspiracy to expose. 8 years of searching had led to this moment, and she was going to see it through, for her father, for the church, for Max, but mostly for justice, which had finally, after so long, found its way home. 3 days after the surgery, Sarah sat in the Vatican gardens, her father's case file open on her laptop. Max lay beside her on a thick blanket, his bandaged torso rising and falling with steady breaths. Dr. Rossi had agreed to let him recover in the open air, saying the sun and fresh breeze would help his healing. Agent Collins. Cardinal Romano approached, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The prosecutors are ready for your statement. Sarah scratched behind Max's ears, earning a contented sigh from her partner. The Belgian Malinois was already showing signs of his old self, though full recovery would take weeks. Any word on Fletcher? He's cooperating fully. The evidence you recovered left him little choice. Romano settled on a nearby bench. 17 cardinals have already recused themselves from future duties due to the blackmail evidence. The church will need time to heal. And Kovalev? Interpol found him an hour ago, trying to cross the Turkish border. Your father's evidence was the key. The financial records he discovered 8 years ago created a trail that led straight to Fletcher's operational accounts. Sarah closed the laptop, her father's case file finally complete. The last piece had been Fletcher's confession, detailing how he'd ordered the car bomb after learning Michael Collins had linked him to the church bombings. The College of Cardinals has requested your presence, Romano continued. They wish to thank you personally before the conclave resumes. Max's ears perked up at Sarah's slight shift in posture. Even injured, he was attuned to her every move. I'm not sure that's... They insisted, both of you. Romano smiled. It's not every day a K9 unit saves the Vatican from corruption. The Sistine Chapel was empty, save for the assembled cardinals when Sarah entered, Max limping slightly beside her. The dog's tactical vest had been replaced with a special harness, marking him as a decorated service animal, his medals gleaming against the black material. The cardinals rose as one, their red robes bright in the afternoon light, filtering through the high windows. The dean of the college stepped forward, his expression solemn. "Agent Collins, Officer Max," he began, his English careful and formal. "The Church has faced many challenges in its long history, but never before has our sacred conclave been protected by such remarkable guardians." He gestured to an aide, who brought forward 2 boxes. "These medals of honor have been blessed by the Church. They carry with them our eternal gratitude and a promise that your service will never be forgotten." Sarah knelt beside Max as the dean placed the medals around their necks. Her partner sat perfectly still, his training holding despite his injuries. 8 years ago they'd been strangers, a rookie handler and a young K-9 recruit. Now they were one unit, one heart. "There is one more thing," the dean continued. "Cardinal Fletcher's actions cast a shadow on this sacred institution, but your father's sacrifice helped bring that darkness to light. We have commissioned a permanent memorial in his honor." Sarah's throat tightened as the aide unveiled a small plaque. It would be mounted in the Vatican Police Headquarters, in memory of Detective Michael Collins. His quest for truth protected the Church's soul. Max pressed against her leg, offering the same comfort he had during those dark days after her father's death. Sarah rested her hand on his head, feeling the strength returning to his muscles. "Thank you," she managed. "My father believed in justice above all else. He would be honored." The ceremony complete, Sarah and Max made their way to the Vatican Police Veterinary Clinic for his afternoon checkup. Dr. Rossi was waiting with good news. "The internal injuries are healing perfectly," she reported. "Another week of rest, and he can begin light duty, a month, maybe less, until full active status." Sarah kissed the top of Max's head. "Hear that, partner? Almost time to get back to work." Max's tail wagged, his eyes bright with the same determination that had helped him push through his injuries to protect her. "Agent Collins!" A young Vatican police officer appeared in the doorway. "There's something you should see." She followed him to the courtyard, Max walking steadily beside her. A crowd had gathered, all eyes turned toward the Sistine Chapel's chimney. As they watched, white smoke began to billow against the blue Roman sky. "Habemus Papam," Romano said softly, appearing beside them. "We have a pope, the first conclave in history to proceed with full transparency, thanks to you and Max." Sarah felt Max lean against her leg as the bells of St. Peter's began to toll. In her pocket, her father's badge seemed to warm slightly. After 8 years, his final case was closed. Justice had been served. The truth had come to light. "Ready to go home, partner?" she asked Max. His tail wagged once, their private signal of complete agreement. Sarah smiled, thinking of their apartment in Atlanta, of future cases to solve, of the bond that had carried them through it all. As they walked through the Vatican gates one last time, Sarah thought about legacy. Her father's quest for truth would be remembered in the halls of the Vatican. Fletcher's corruption had been exposed, Kovalev's organization dismantled. But the real victory was simpler. A woman and her dog, partners until the end, proving that justice might sometimes come slowly, but it always arrives. Max's pace was steady now, his strength returning with each step. Sarah matched his rhythm, just as she had for 6 years. There would be other cases, other challenges. But for now, she was content with this moment. White smoke rising in the distance, her father's badge in her pocket, and Max beside her, loyal guardian of truth in a world of shadows. Behind them, the bells of St. Peter's continued their joyful chorus, celebrating not just a new pope, but a church renewed, its foundations stronger for having faced the darkness and emerged, with the help of an extraordinary partnership, into the light.